Yes, guys, what's happening? And welcome back to the channel and welcome to this evening's live stream. And with no midweek football, there's a bit of a gap to plug content-wise. So I'm going to be discussing Chelsea's summer transfer targets. I know the January window didn't close that long ago, but already there's links with summer targets. So joining me today to discuss this is Theo from the Shed End podcast. Mate, thanks for joining me as always. Always a pleasure. As I said, it doesn't seem like 2 minutes since the January window closed, but already, summer targets are being written about, etc., etc. The obvious, your Declan Rice's, your Tchouamenis, your Kounde that we kind of linked with all of last summer. But before we get into all of that, mate, I just wanted to start on players that are still here but might end up leaving. We've got 3 players out of contract, all defenders: Rudiger, Christensen, and Azpilicueta. If we start with Antonio Rudiger, obviously this has been rumbling on for quite a while now. Let me just find it. Where are we? Yeah, there we go. Let's bring it up. So obviously seems pretty clear to me that a good few months ago now, last year, that Rudiger was pretty much gone. Then it seemed to be potentially coming back round, so he might stay. And I'll just bring this up. This is from obviously Nathan Gissing, runs CFC news page over on Instagram, very reliable source. And he basically said a few days ago that Rudiger wants in the region of 225k a week, as it says on the screen, to extend his contract at Chelsea. Talks are ongoing. It's been offered 4 years plus 1. And also coming out today in The Athletic that Chelsea prepared to prioritise Antonio Rudiger's situation over Andreas Christensen. Firstly, Theo, I just want to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that's the right thing to do? I don't think we're going to be able to keep both of these. So do you think that the club are making the right choice and potentially prioritising Rudiger's future over Christensen's?
I definitely think signing Rudiger down to a new deal would feel like a new signing almost, because he's been so good in that back three under Tuchel since Tuchel came in January 2021. He's probably been one of our best players. And if you had to prioritise one over the other, it would have to be Rudiger over Christensen. It seems like Christensen wasn't likely to sign a new deal maybe last summer, and we've offered him so many, contract offers that he's turned down. Then he switched agent, and then he got dropped during that one period between November and December, it felt. But signing Rudiger to a new deal would be immense. I think only a couple of months ago, it looked like he was on the verge of joining a Bayern Munich, a Real Madrid, whereas now it almost looks like nothing certain in football, but I'd say maybe 70% sure that he will stay if we offer him the right amount of money, which would be in the region of 225k a week. Is he worth that? I want to say yes. You look at the crazy amounts of money nowadays that our footballers are demanding, the likes of Mo Salah wanting well over 500k a week. I think it is 600. I'm not sure what it is. And he has been performing. I just hope that if we do offer him that amount of money, he remains consistent with his performances and it doesn't drop a level. Because you may be thinking as well, he's putting in all these great performances to earn that money, or maybe, gain the interest of other clubs.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a worry, isn't it, when you got someone that's out of contract? They're obviously playing well because there's no there's no pressure on them. They're fighting for they're playing for their future essentially. They can kind of pick where they want to go at the end of the season. We've seen it with Arsenal many times before. Someone playing really well to get a big new contract, and then as soon as that contract's signed, the performances go through the floor. I'd like to think that Rudiger's not that sort of character and that sort of player. I couldn't imagine that him signing a new deal would suddenly mean his performances kind of go to shit. But admittedly, you never know. I mean, 225k a week, obviously to the average person, astronomical amount of money. In footballing terms, for a top professional, it's not that much money. I know that sounds a ridiculous thing to say, but it's not a lot of money. When you look at the likes of Timo Werner on kind of 250, obviously we got Loftus-Cheek who's on 150k a week at Chelsea. When you put it into perspective of like squad players that are on big money compared to kind of what Rudiger's on at the moment, this is not unrealistic. But I mean, why do you think this is taking so long? Because 225k a week doesn't seem that difficult to sort out. Do you think Rudiger's still sussing out what other options might come on the table in the summer? What do you think the hold-up is?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the sum of money, there was a period they were saying that he wanted 400k. So now that he's wanting 225k, almost half what he was wanting before, if those rumors were true, then I say just give him that contract. Why it's taking so long? Maybe we're going through a period where we're playing in some important cup finals. Maybe we want to kind of wait until after that period. But that being said, why couldn't we make those negotiations before Christmas, for instance? Or I'm not entirely sure. I'd want to think that maybe he was more looking like he wanted to leave before Christmas, whereas now he wants to stay. Maybe Tuchel's trying to prioritize someone else's contract first, the likes of an Azpilicueta, who seems like there's a possibility he might stay as well if he declines the offers from Barcelona. But the longer it goes, the more kind of worried you get as a Chelsea fan. I thought he kind of signed this contract straight after the summer. With a year left on his deal, you'd want him to sign a contract as early as possible. But we're almost in March now, and 3 months left into the season, a bit worrying.
It is a little bit worrying, but I think out of the two, he's definitely the one that's most likely to stay, and it looks like he's the one that the club are most focused on keeping. Just briefly on Andreas Christensen, don't want to spend too long on this. As you touched on, he's obviously been offered at least one or two different contract offers. Obviously, he switched his representation, etc. Borussia Dortmund wanted him, but couldn't negotiate a deal, which is why they got Nicolas Süle instead. I think Bayern Munich is still interested. Barcelona are interested in Andreas Christensen as well. As far as I'm concerned, it would be a shame to lose him. I think he's a great age. He's shown that he can perform really well. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if I don't care how good you are, if you don't want to be at the club, then you need to go. Would you be of the same thinking? I mean, how disappointed would you be with Christensen departing, which is looking likely?
I feel very disappointed because I feel all our centre-backs have adapted so well to that three at the back system, and having to replace that void would feel like almost a new challenge because a player would have to adapt to the system, the formation. Seeing Christensen leave would be a shame, like you said. He's at a right age. But if you don't want to be at the club, then you're flirting with other clubs, a bit like how Rudiger was. But Rudiger's slightly, that step above. Yeah. So that's why I want to kind of prioritize his deal over Christensen's. And it does look like he's set his mind. I think it's on Barcelona now. Yeah. I don't know if it's the Spanish lifestyle that maybe appeals to him more. But I don't really see Barcelona being able to offer more money than what Chelsea have offered, which is what confuses me a bit.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, could want a new challenge. But yeah, you think with Chelsea doing so well and him at the age he is kind of mid-20s, he could be a big part of the success moving forward. But ultimately, as I said, if someone doesn't want to be here, that's their personal choice. And ultimately, you have to let them go. Just rounding out on the players that could leave very quickly, Azpilicueta obviously became Chelsea's most decorated player at the weekend by winning the Club World Cup. So he's the first player in Chelsea's history to now win everything. He's got a 1-year deal on the table, a 1+1. So obviously, it'll be a year's contract with, I presume, bonuses to activate a further year, probably based on appearances and whatnot. He wants a two years +1. He's got that contract offer on the table from Barcelona. Ultimately, I don't think any Chelsea fan would hold any grudge against him for choosing to move on if that were the case. How do you see this one going? Because Chelsea have got a notorious policy of in your 30s only offering a 1-year deal. The 1+1's on the table. He wants a 2+1, which is on the table from Barcelona. I wouldn't begrudge him leaving, but I do feel that we could still have some use for him.
I'd have to agree. I don't think they've ever really made an exception in offering a 2-year contract to a player that's over 30. Even Lampard, Terry, they only got 1-year deals. I do expect him, should he stay, or even for the remainder of the season, now that Reece James is slowly getting fit again, to play a smaller role. But if that smaller role means having his presence in the dressing room, his experience in the dressing room, being able to help younger players with his knowledge of football, then I think that could be really, really valuable. And I know I'm not in charge, but if it's a 2-year deal, I would potentially give it to him because we know he's won so much. Like you said, he's almost a decorated Chelsea player, and not just what he brings on the football pitch, but on a training ground and in the dressing room. He's our captain after all. That's going to be very, very hard to replace. And like what we saw in the Super Cup final, those tactics with the penalty, I never really thought of a player doing that before, but maybe Azpilicueta thought about that on a training ground and wanted to do that with Kai Havertz or whoever gets the penalty.
Yeah, no, I think we should try our best to keep him, but ultimately, again, similar with Christensen, if he decides that he wants to move on, then he'd go with all Chelsea fans' best wishes, but it would leave a big hole to fill in the squad. I mean, whilst we're on defenders, sticking on now targets that could come in, it's clear that Chelsea are going to need to sign definitely one centre-back. If Rudiger does leave as well, we're going to need to sign 2. Jules Kounde, who we very nearly signed last summer, Fabrizio Romano saying, I think on a podcast today or in the last couple of days, that Chelsea are pushing hard to sign Jules Kounde. This deal only just didn't happen last summer. I mean, Theo, this is pretty much a formality. Kounde pretty much saying he wants to leave Sevilla, he wants to join Chelsea. This has really got to be just keep agreeing a fee. I mean, I can't see personal terms being an issue. I mean, how exciting a signing would he be?
I think he's a great centre-back. And like you said, he's unhappy at Sevilla. He wants to join Chelsea. That would make you think we could negotiate a better price this summer than we were able to last summer. The last thing you want is an unhappy player at the club, like we just spoke about with Christensen and Rudiger. I do think he's a great centre-back, quite versatile. He can play, in the back three. He played in the back three with France, I believe. He played right back with France before. He plays in a back two with Sevilla. My one worry with him, which I think a lot of Chelsea fans have spoken about, is his height. He's not the tallest for a centre-back. He's got a good leap on him, but he's still not the tallest. And also, he's a bit of a hothead. From the few Sevilla games that I have watched, he tends to kind of get involved a lot, get sent off. I think he was involved in a spat with Jordi Alba, I think when Sevilla played Barcelona and got sent off. And I do feel maybe there are better centre-back options over Jules Kounde. I do think, Fofana from Leicester, really exciting player. I was actually really disappointed we missed out on Sula on a free from Bayern Munich. I thought he would have been a perfect centre-back to play alongside maybe a Tony Rudiger with that German connection. But I think Dortmund have got themselves an absolute steal with Nicolas Sula on a free. But I always say this, I think if whoever Tuchel wants, and if that is Jules Kounde, then I back him to make that signing because he must see something in him to play in a back three or whichever system or formation he wants to be playing for the upcoming season.
Yeah, I think Kounde is a really, really good player. I've seen him play for Sevilla. He looks comfortable as a centre-back in a four. He looks comfortable in a back three that he's played in France. And he's also played right back at times as well, which could be a very useful option to have that versatility to replace Reece James every so often with the sheer amount of games we're going to play. So I would fully expect Jules Kounde to arrive. I think it's the right profile. It's the right age, early 20s. I think he's 23. It ticks all the boxes. So, I mean, Chelsea have almost got an open goal on this deal. So we just need to finalise it and get it over the line and get it done pretty much as soon as the summer starts.
I was going to add as well, he shares the same agent as Tchouameni.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, so Chelsea got good open dialogue with that agent, etc. So a deal you would imagine shouldn't be too difficult to do. Another name that in the centre half area that has been linked with Chelsea, it's going to cost a lot of money to get out of Juventus, but it could be plausible. Matthijs de Ligt, another fantastic centre half. Hasn't had the best of times at Juventus. Perhaps not lived up to the expectations that they were expecting from him when he joined from Ajax, but he's still done very well. A very exciting young defender, clearly talented. Do you think that Chelsea could seriously be having a look at him? And would you like that? I mean, I'd be a big fan of this move, but again, it's dealing with Mino Raiola, who's a notoriously difficult agent to deal with. Do you want to bring him into the club? And it's going to cost you a lot of money. And as you say, there probably are cheaper alternatives out there.
I do think he's a fantastic player. He's been a bit injured since he's joined Juventus, and I do think he's playing, behind what I think is a very weak Juventus midfield. I don't think Rabiot or Bentancur were fantastic midfielders during their time at Juventus, and probably why he's had to deal with so much pressure and why Juventus have been quite defensively poor. But you could watch him with the Netherlands. If you watched him in that amazing Ajax season when they got to the Champions League semi-finals, you know what he was capable of. If I'm not mistaken, I think wasn't he captain of that Ajax side?
Yeah, he was
maybe
captain at 18.
Yeah, which tells you a lot about the player and his mentality. That's another centre back I think I would prefer over Jules Kounde, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be centre backs coming in at Chelsea. Kounde, we would expect, possibly de Ligt, or maybe some others. But that's definitely an area that needs to be addressed with certainly one centre back. But depending on the outgoings, it could end up being two. So it's an area that 100% the club will be looking to address this summer. In terms of moving on to wing backs, I don't think particularly anyone being noted in right wing back. We obviously got Reece James. Azpilicueta could stay. If Kounde comes in again, that's another option there as well. So we could be fairly well covered on that side. It's the left wing back side. Ben Chilwell, obviously long-term injury. He's not really good. I would be surprised if he played for Chelsea this year. I really would in a competitive game, which leaves us with Marcos Alonso. 31 years of age, 18 months left on his contract. I think he did an interview over during the Club World Cup where he's saying that he would like to retire at Chelsea. I know people have got mixed opinions on him, but for my opinion, we probably do need to bring someone in on that left-hand side of better quality. Alonso could be moved on this summer. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. We have been linked with Borna Sosa, the Stuttgart left back, who has done pretty well in the Bundesliga this season. I don't know an awful lot about him, but Chelsea have been scouting him, and he would be a fairly kind of cheap, as it were, in this day's market option. How do you feel about that? I mean, do you think Alonso will stick around this summer, or if a suitable offer comes in, the club will be quite happy to move him on and kind of refresh that left-hand side?
I think what us Chelsea fans need to remember is that he's not our first choice left wing back. That is Ben Chilwell, and all these performances he puts in lately that are average or below par. I feel he's been scapegoated a lot of the time when things do go wrong. I wouldn't mind him staying another year, if I'm honest. I do like hearing Chelsea players saying, "I want to retire at Chelsea," because it shows that they love the club, they love the atmosphere at the club, they love the fans, and he has been a great servant to us. And I'm saying I'd love him to stay if he's still kind of that second choice behind Ben Chilwell. Like you said, I can't really think of many left wing backs out there that we can snatch up. There's the Stuttgart player that you mentioned, Emerson coming back from his loan. That could potentially be an option as well. Maatsen, maybe if he comes back from his loan from Coventry. We still don't really know what we're going to do with Kennedy, if he's even going to play a part this season. And if he does, whether he impresses the manager, maybe that could earn him a role in the team until Chilwell regains his fitness. So it's a bit of a tricky one because I don't really know many players available, that could play left wing back. We missed out on Digne last month, but I wouldn't mind Alonso to stay for one more season. There's still the option of him going to Atletico Madrid. I think Barcelona have been linked, so I think it's going to happen. I think that he will go back to La Liga eventually.
Yeah, no, I think he will as well. And I mean, ultimately, there's no point just bringing someone in for the sake of it. It's got to be someone that can actually would be better than Alonso, not someone that's going to be on a par. You want an improvement there, because at the moment Alonso's first choice wing back, and he probably will be for the rest of this year. So we do need to bring someone in the summer that is potentially going to be a long-term understudy to Chilwell. I mean, Sosa, I don't know an awful lot about him, as I said, but by all means, a pretty solid player. Chelsea have scouted him. He's obviously half decent, and it could be a good deal to get done and to bring in, and someone that can kind of learn from Marcos Alonso, learn from Ben Chilwell, and ultimately kind of play a role within the squad. But otherwise, as you say, it's a specialist position, and there's not a lot of top quality players around in that position that are A, available, and B, are at the price that Chelsea would be prepared to pay. So it's going to be a difficult one. But I think, again, that is an option. That is a position that does need to be looked at if we're going to challenge for the league next season, which ultimately has got to be the aim. Mate, moving away from defence, moving into midfield now. This is where it gets interesting. Before we talk about incomings, I wanted to talk about Georginio and Golo Kante. They are both out of contract in the summer of 2023. So they've got about 18 months left on their deals. It will be a year left as we approach the summer. This is a difficult situation. I mean, Georginio, as his agent, at least, has always said that he wants to go back and play in Italy in his prime. I tweeted out the other day that I personally wouldn't renew either of them. Now, I know that might sound a bit ridiculous, but I think as a club, we've got to build towards the future. Do we really want both these guys still here when they're 33, 34? We've got young players coming through, the likes of Conor Gallagher, the likes of Billy Gilmore. We could bring in Tchouameni, we could bring in Declan Rice. We need to be thinking ahead of the game. I always think it's always better to sell someone a year too early than a year too late. And I think a lot of Chelsea fans need to realise as well that we aren't going to get the same money that we paid for these players because of their age and because of how long's left on their contracts. We're just simply not going to get the same money for them. That's just how it works. But I do think we need to look towards the future. If I had a preference of keeping one or the other, I'd probably keep Kante and look to bring someone else in place of Georginio and give someone else a chance. Well, I mean, just on that, Theo, would you renew one, both, none? What would you do there?
I'm in two minds. You made some very great points why you should potentially sell them now rather than wait a year or two when they've kind of passed their prime, and you could probably get still a reasonable amount of money for the pair of them now. That being said, their kind of characteristics and strengths are so unique that it's hard to replace them. Kante is probably the best at what he does, or was the best at what he does. He's maybe slowly on the down, not as good as he was. Jorginho, he sets the tempo to games. We saw that when he came off against Al Hilal. The game kind of switched afterwards. I do kind of want to agree with you, but at the same time, I'd be very disappointed to see both of them go this summer. Maybe this summer after is another question. But when you've got some fresh players like Tchouameni like Conor Gallagher, like Declan Rice potentially. Another player we haven't spoken about is Ethan Ampadu, who's had a great season at Venezia, and I think he's playing as a CDM there. So he's versatile. He can play centre back. He can play midfield. Chaloba is another player as well, quite versatile. Can play midfield. We haven't really seen that too much at Chelsea yet, but it's an option. But if I had to make a choice, I'd keep them at least for one more season. It almost feels harsh, crazy that we're having this conversation. Should we sell Georginio and Kante? But I guess we're so blessed to be linked to all these big names and also have so much depth in midfield and quality in midfield as well.
Yeah, I mean, midfield is highly stacked. I think if we do switch to a back four next season, which is very much plausible, we definitely need to bring in a holding midfield player. Again, it depends what we want to do. Do we keep them for another season and run the risk of losing them for nothing, or do you think, right, let's get as much money as we possibly can and move them on? I look at Liverpool as a model, and I think Liverpool recruit very well, do their business very well, and you can already see now that they've still got Mane, Salah and Firmino, but they're already bringing in players that are going to be the next ones to take over from them. They've already bought in Jota, they've bought in Diaz. You can already see that those two are going to be two of the next front three at Liverpool. And they've bought them in already, and they're learning the system, and they're going to be ready to go once those guys depart. And I think Chelsea could probably learn from that in terms of bringing in the next players, and they can have a year to settle in before they then become the main ones. I mean, it's a difficult situation to be in, but I mean, obviously Declan Rice is a name that is long been linked with Chelsea. Was obviously released at 14 as a Chelsea fan. I think a move back to Stamford Bridge, I don't want to say it's inevitable, but it could be very likely this summer, depending on if West Ham get in the Champions League or not. I mean, Theo, where do you stand on Declan Rice? I mean, I think it would be a fantastic signing. I mean, some sections of the fan base are a bit split on it, but I think he's a top footballer, great leadership qualities, and has got the potential to be world class in his position. Knows the Premier League. I know, some people think that adapting to the league is not a thing. It definitely is. He does know the Premier League. He does also have to adapt to Chelsea's style of play, but he'd be the perfect profile of player. It just depends on how much money would Chelsea be prepared to pay, because Declan Rice is going to cost almost, you'd think, close to £100 million. Just bringing this up on the screen now. According to Fabrizio Romano on his Here We Go podcast, Declan Rice's price will be 90 to 95 million pounds. And obviously we're interested alongside both Manchester clubs. I mean, what are your thoughts on Declan Rice and the amount of money being bandied about?
I mean, with Chelsea, it almost feels it's just a matter of time before we sign him. He's a boyhood Chelsea fan, best mates with Mason Mount. His recent interview with Gary Neville, he said he's regularly in touch with John Terry. He grew up in Kingston, had a season ticket at Chelsea. And seeing that tweet there, I would hate to lose him to Man City or Manchester United, because he's exactly what Manchester United need in a way. I do think he'd be a fantastic acquisition and signing for Chelsea. I didn't really rate him as much as other people until I watched him at the Euros this summer with England, where he was absolutely fantastic. And if we, like you mentioned, Georginio and Kante is slowly coming to that age now where we can get probably still a decent price for them, but their performances may be on maybe decreasing. So it could be a fantastic signing, but I still feel like we may hold off for another season somehow.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same, that we could be holding off for another season. But my only problem with that is I just don't feel we can run the risk of losing him to a City or a United, because City are going to be looking for a long-term replacement for Fernandinho. United desperately need a six, and that both those clubs would be prepared to bid that amount of money to get him. They wouldn't really think twice about it. So I think Chelsea need to be on the front foot here and be proactive. Look, ideally, we probably would wait maybe another season, but I'm not sure in the market if we could afford to do that. I mean, we could probably raise the funds quite quickly, for the amount of dead wood we've got to sell off. Your drink wasn't going to go on a free, but your likes of your Bakayokos, your Batshuayis, your Baba Rahmans that are still at the club. There's loads of dead wood that we can get rid of. Plus, as much as people don't like it, the academy lads make a lot of money. And if we put some buyback clauses in some of the better ones, then it's an easy way to raise quick funds to fund the move for Declan Rice. So whilst it's a lot of money, we need to be proactive and hopefully be on the front foot. But I mean, do you think it's the right profile of midfield player as well? I mean, I think he's perfect for that single six if we switch to a back four.
Yeah, he's the perfect kind of midfielder we would look at. He drives the ball well up the pitch. He does come up with goals occasionally, which is sometimes what we lack in midfield with our players. We saw his goal against, was it Kidminster, I think?
Yeah, it's a great goal.
Yeah, great goal. That's what he's capable of. And like you said, as much as it's sad to see academy players go, last summer when we sold Mark Guehi to Crystal Palace, Tino Livramento to Southampton, we got decent amounts of money for them.
Yeah.
And it probably did make sense. Were they going to play for Chelsea in the near future? Probably not. Did they want regular first team football? Yes. So you could add to that list maybe Tino Angerin leaving this summer, on a permanent deal. I wouldn't be surprised if Maatsen leaves permanently as well. There's a type of players that we could get close to 20 mil for potentially. So I'm not really worried about the price, and knowing Chelsea would be willing to pay that price. I can just imagine Moyes and West Ham playing quite, might be quite difficult to negotiate with.
Yeah. No, I can imagine it'd be very difficult, but it's definitely one that I'd love to see happen. And, it would be a big transfer for the summer. I don't think we'd be bringing in a lot else other than Declan Rice. But there would be other positions coming in. But yeah, he'd be the main signing. I'd love to see it happen, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Again, it's a lot of money, and West Ham are going to be tough to deal with. But I mean, other midfield targets, Tchouameni, obviously shares the same agent as Jules Kounde, as you mentioned earlier. We could have got this guy last summer for about 40 million euros. He's having a great season with Monaco. That price now seems to be going up towards 60, 70 million euros. So by not acting last summer, it looks like it could cost us an extra 20 to 30 million euros potentially. This guy is a great player. I've watched him a few times for Monaco. Cesc Fabregas is a big fan of this as well.
I was about to say.
The recommendations don't come much better than that. I mean, Theo, do you think it's going to be either or do you think it could potentially be both?
I think it could potentially be both, especially we still don't really know what's going to happen with Gallagher, Gilmore. I think one of Sao Niguez, we have to remember, probably we won't make that permanent.
He's gone back, yeah.
Yeah, even though he's looked a bit better in the last couple of months. I can't see us making that permanent, even if it's for 36 mil.
Yeah,
I think
definitely not.
No, so I think he's on his way out. So it could potentially.
Sheik could be in trouble as well this summer.
It's sad.
As much as I hate to say it, I think he'd be one that I think the club would look to sell.
It was. You look at how Chilwell travelled to Abu Dhabi with the squad, even though he wasn't going to play. I'm thinking in my head, couldn't have lost his cheek on as well. You just celebrate with the team. It didn't happen, so it looks likely he'll be off. Barkley, another one.
Yeah.
So it could be both. I don't see why it's not both. I'm a huge Cesc Fabregas fan. Even during his Arsenal days, I literally looked up to him. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know how much I praise Cesc Fabregas. But like you said, if Cesc Fabregas has praised him, I think he said when it was a Q&A, he said he's the complete midfielder. Yeah. And but just we need him for Monaco for a bit longer, almost saying that it's only a matter of time as well before he leaves for a bigger club, i.e. Chelsea. But probably I haven't watched as much Monaco as you have, but from what I've read about him, he almost seems like the perfect player to replace Kante potentially.
Yeah, I think it could be a long-term Kante replacement, but I think he's another one that he's going to have a lot of suitors, and Chelsea are going to have to act fast. If we really want him, we need to bring him in this summer, even if it means congesting that midfield and having to sell potentially a Georginio maybe. Like, we need to look to the future and make space. So again, Tchouameni and Rice are deals that we need to be proactive with, because if we're not, we run a high risk of losing them to another big European club, which is exactly what we don't want to do. Just wanted to move away from midfield now and to move on to the forward positions. I think it's kind of very likely that there's going to be some shuffling of the pack in the front line. I wouldn't expect Timo Werner to be at the club next season. I'm not sure on Christian Pulisic either at the moment, whether he's going to be there. Hakim Ziyech, I would have said, would have been one that I'd have that might have been moving on, but actually in recent weeks has been our best attacker. And if we do play a back four going forward, then he's going to be a real asset, as we've seen when we played that back four. But I think there's going to be one or two going out in the front line, one or two coming in. One player who we have been linked with, I just want to bring it up on the screen now. I don't know how likely this would be and how much money it would cost, but I have to say I'm a big fan of this guy. What are your thoughts on Leeds United's Raphina? Do you think he'd be a good profile, good fit for Chelsea? It's always difficult for Chelsea with attacking players because guys are good at other clubs, and then in the back of your mind, you're like, we seem to be a graveyard for attackers. We come to Chelsea and they seem to lose their ability to play football. But with putting that to one side, mate, is this someone that excites you? Do you like Rafinha? Do you think he'd be a good fit at Chelsea?
I mean, no disrespect to Leeds fans if they're watching, but I think he's way too good for Leeds. Every time I've watched Leeds, it's literally been almost a Rafinha show, but they'll still concede 4 goals at the back. So he's only a matter of time. Another player who would depart for a bigger club. I feel like his profile is very similar to maybe a Pulisic, of Hudson-Odoi, quite pacey, good, gets past players quite easily, but at the same time, I feel Werner, Pulisic, those type of players you mentioned, I can't see someone of a similar profile coming in if we don't get rid of one of them.
Yeah.
Another player that's quite versatile, I feel. I don't know exactly where he plays. I know he's kind of a winger, but potentially if he improves his defensive part of his game, can maybe play as a wing back as well. I'm not sure if he's played there before. Maybe I'm completely mistaken. I'm thinking of someone else, but great player. Lille seems to produce. No, it's not Lille. Sorry, it's Rennes.
It's Rennes, yeah.
Rennes seem to produce some good players. Ousmane Dembele's come from there. It's another player that we've been linked with, which I don't really want. I'd much rather a Rafinha or invest that money in a Declan Rice. But no, he's an exciting player, and I think it's only a matter of time before we kind of make a big decision on the wingers we have, especially if they continue to lack consistency in their performances.
Mate, who out of the current front line we've got, I mean, who do you think's in the most danger of being moved on this summer?
Timo Werner.
Yeah.
Timo Werner, simply because the last couple of games, he's come on really late as a substitute when we actually need someone off the bench to impact it.
Yeah.
And those games against, was it Plymouth? Plymouth.
He was dreadful against Plymouth when he came on. He was okay. He was okay when he came on. He didn't play at all in the semi-final of the Club World Cup. He come on in the final. He was okay, but it's the same thing with Werner. He'll do something good and he'll follow it up with something dreadful.
It's just his finishing is very tame. His decision making is quite poor at times. And those 3 games you just mentioned, Plymouth, Al Hilal, and even the Club World Cup final, those are games we'd expect him to start potentially. Yeah. And he hasn't, so it kind of indicates that he's not in Tuchel's long-term plans.
I don't think he is at all, mate. I think, as I say, he's the one that's in big trouble, and I think Pulisic 50-50 for me. I think if an offer did come in for Pulisic this summer, I think the club would be very tempted to take it. I just think he's been too inconsistent.
His recent quotes as well, when he said that he should have been started and he wanted to start and was quite disappointed not to start. It's what you want as a footballer.
Yeah, you want that, yeah.
But it kind of indicates that maybe, he's slowly getting frustrated with his time at Chelsea.
But I think it could be, and ultimately, if we do sell these players, it's going to be, some of those are going to be, they'll go on and they'll do really well at other clubs. You just think it just wasn't meant to be at Chelsea. These are good footballers, but it's not working out at the moment. So I think those two are definitely the ones that are most in danger. I mean, I don't know how much you know about this young lad. He plays for Reims. Newcastle were linked with him. Just to round out, we're going to talk about a couple of centre forwards. Where is it? Is this
I think that, I know which name you're going to bring up.
Is it this one? Oh, yeah, this is it here. Hugo Ekitike. Sport Bill reporting that obviously Newcastle had a bid rejected for him in a January window. He's meant to be an exciting young talent over in France. I think this is his kind of first big season, kind of his breakthrough season. Dortmund are interested. It's a sort of thing Dortmund would be all over, a kind of a young up-and-coming striker. Dortmund seem to sign all the kind of the young up-and-coming players. Are you surprised to see, I don't know how accurate these reports are. I know Sport Bill's a big publication in Germany, generally quite accurate. Do you think that's the sort of signing that Chelsea need to do? I mean, I think we do need a backup centre forward in terms of the fact that we've only got Lukaku as an out-and-out number 9. We haven't got any other number 9s. I know Havertz plays as a number 9, but he's not really a proper number 9. We have one proper number 9, and that's it. I mean, I was honestly really surprised when we let Tammy and Giroud go that another number 9 didn't come in. I mean, do you think a backup 9 is what we need?
We've got one though. He's out on loan at Southampton.
Yeah, but do you think we need another one?
I just feel we've invested so much money in Romelu Lukaku that we're kind of still going to give him the game time and the time he needs to prove that he's our number 9, our £100 million man. That I don't think we'll be buying another number 9 for a big amount of money. Yeah. So this is why I can't see his name, Hugo Ekitike. If we get him for a good price, it could be an option. But I think Armando Broja out on loan at Southampton would be the most sensible one. He's our player. We wouldn't be paying. And he's been linked to Dortmund. He's been linked to Bayern. So it's kind of
to quite a few clubs.
So I think that's the most logical option if we need a a partner for Lukaku even.
Yeah.
We know that Lukaku played best with Martinez at Inter in the front two. So if he can replicate that with Broja, if he can slowly get that game time he needs alongside Havertz, then that's an option. But I think Werner's the one who's going to suffer the most.
Yeah, I mean, do you think we need, like, whether it's Broja or whether it's someone else, like, obviously having let Tammy and Giroud go, do you feel that we are a bit light in the number 9 position, and that we've obviously, over a long season, playing in a lot of different competitions, there's going to need to be rest and rotation, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be suspensions. Are you surprised that we didn't actually bring in another number 9 or keep someone?
I think the logic last summer was that we'd rotate between Lukaku, Havertz, and Werner. But at times, Havertz and Werner, when you play them as a number, like a false 9, they've
been awful.
Yeah. Awful, exactly. So there might be decisions to make this summer. Another option, I think, who in a matter of time before, no disrespect to Ajax, but I think he might come back to the Premier League, is Sebastian Haller. Yeah, he's been absolutely, he's great.
Yeah.
But then I think his profile is quite similar to Lukaku's in terms of, he's more of a goal poacher rather than a Broja who maybe bully past players, a bit like Diego Costa used to do. So it's interesting, but I don't think getting a backup number 9 is probably our main priority. I think it should be centre mid and centre back.
Yeah, no, 100%. Just to round out, mate, I want to talk about Armando Broja. Obviously, young lads come through the Chelsea Academy from Albania. Not actually, I don't think they're that well known for producing good footballers. I couldn't really tell you another Albanian player. But obviously seems to be a talented lad. He's gone out on loan to Southampton this season. He's scored a handful of goals. He's looked dangerous. He's looked good. That's all very well and good. But for me, the one thing that I'm not saying he's not talented because he clearly is, but one thing that's kind of niggles away in the back of my mind is it's completely different leading the line for Southampton than it is leading the line for Chelsea. There's a massive difference. Teams are going to play very differently against Southampton than what they play against Chelsea. I'm not saying the lad can't do it. I'm sure he definitely can. But people saying, bringing back Broja's great and that. There's no guarantee that Broja comes to Chelsea and he's going to be decent. I wouldn't have him as a first choice forward at the moment. And does he want to sit on the bench and not play a lot at this stage in his career? When you're young, you want to go and develop your game, play regularly. It's a difficult one for me. I mean, it is really tough. Clearly talented, but it is, as I said, it is very different leading the line for Southampton than it is leading the line for Chelsea. I mean, the pressure goes up an enormous amount. I mean, can he play? Is he Champions League quality? All these kind of different questions. I mean, and he's another one as well that would make quite a lot of money. You could easily get £40 million for him. And if we're looking to fund a Declan Rice or a Tchouameni or a couple of centre-backs, that's an easy 40 million just straight in the bank.
Yeah, and what does indicate that maybe if there was an investment because we want to get as much money as we can for him, or because whether Tuchel actually does rate him and he sees him as part of the Chelsea squad in the future, is he did sign a new contract last summer.
Yeah, 5 years, I think it was.
He did impress Tuchel in pre-season. He was taking part in those games, scored against Bournemouth, I think, at the Vitality Stadium. Yeah. I think Gallagher and Gilmore and Broja, the 3 players, the most likely, maybe two of the 3 of them to come back into the squad and play regular football. When I say regular, I don't know how regular it's going to be. But what I do like now is this Chelsea mentality of if a player performs out on loan, they'll earn their place back into the first team. That never used to happen at Chelsea. No, I think that first season under Lampard really kind of cemented that. We saw it with Tomori, with Abraham, with Mount. They've impressed on their loans in the Championship or wherever they were. They came back into the Chelsea team and they performed. So it gives me hope for Broja. It gives me hope for Conor Gallagher. I think Tuchel's going to have a very interesting squad coming back in pre-season and he's going to have to make some big decisions. Yeah,
there's also Levi Colwell as well, doing well at Huddersfield. I mean, that's another one that he could be ready for the squad, like Trevor Chaloba could be something we unearth. But ultimately, I think it's probably next season for him is going to be a Premier League loan. That would be the next step. That would be the next step up for me to play regular Premier League football before coming in maybe the season after for Chelsea. He'd still be only 20 if he goes on another season on loan. So there's plenty of time on the lad's side. But I mean, last thing, do you think on Broja, do you think the club will sell him or do you think he's going to play a part next season?
I don't think we'll sell him, no. I think it will either be he'll be back in the Chelsea first team or it'll be another loan, whether it's Southampton again or a bigger team. I don't know, but I can't see us selling him. I think that'll be a big regret of ours.
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting summer ahead. I know we're only in the middle of February, but that summer window will be coming round pretty quickly. Chelsea have got a lot of business to do, incomings and outcomings, and it's critical that the club get this absolutely spot on this summer and fully back Thomas Tuchel. Everything's indicating that they will. But until it happens, there's always a slight doubt in the back of your mind. But ultimately, the recruitment next summer does need to be spot on, because we really do, as much as it's great winning all these cups, ultimately the fans want to win the league. And I think the board want a league challenge as well. And we've not had one of those for a long time. So we need to assemble a squad and a starting lineup that can compete over 38 games and win the league, because that's where we need to be back to. But yeah, that's just myself and Theo's thoughts on the summer transfer targets. As always, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments and the chat on if you agree or disagree, any other names or options you want to float about. Theo, thanks so much for joining me as always, mate. Always a pleasure. Make sure you subscribe to Theo's YouTube channel as well and listen to his podcast. I've linked it in the description below, so go and check that out, guys. Make sure you smash a like on this video and subscribe to the channel as well. Looking to hit 400 subs by the end of the month. We need to get a bit of a move on. So if you're watching live or you're watching it back and you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, spread the word, and help the channel grow. But yeah, thanks for your time as always, mate. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Up the Chelsea, and catch you again soon.